Well, the Portland Pedophile Police Department and the Multnomah County Pedo Sheriffs and their buddy, their bro, the female apartment manager that runs this dump here, is currently, right now at this very moment, paying and directing a bunch of children outside my apartment to run around and make pedo accusations. They act like they're playing out there. They go near my apartment, and I'm on the second floor. They're down on the ground floor level area playing out in a courtyard. And anytime they get near my apartment, they scream out the word pedo, and then they run away. And I'm sitting here by my stupid laptop watching Nova on YouTube, who happens to be a very popular YouTuber, and I'm sitting here doing absolutely fucking nothing wrong, and right outside my apartment, the Multnomah County Pedo Sheriffs and the Portland Pedo Police Department and the apartment manager, who happens to be in the apartment not directly below me, but directly below me and one apartment over. So they have a history of doing this shit. They call it pedofying. The police department and the county sheriffs have a shit ton of girlfriends and relatives and buddies, and they usually recruit their female girlfriends that have children into pedofying people. So right now they're paying a bunch of brats that don't even live here to run around out here in this courtyard outside my apartment. And anytime they get near my apartment, they act like they're out there playing, and then when they deliberately come near my apartment, and then they scream and run away saying, pedo! So this is their way of pedofying people, framing people. They do this for the purpose of their own video surveillance. I'm sure right now, law enforcement, right now, at this very moment, is out there recording the children doing just that. They're the ones directing those children to do this shit. They're the ones that bring the children here to do this shit, and they direct them to do this shit, and they do it over and over again. Now, this is about the 8th time they've ran near my apartment, and then they run away yelling, pedo. But they keep coming back towards my apartment, and then they repeat the process over and over and over again. They do this to give my neighbors, fellow tenants around here, the impression that I'm some sort of a bad guy. In other words, through their own performances, they're trying to make me look like a bad guy when I am sitting in my own apartment doing absolutely fucking nothing wrong. I'm fucking disabled from being poisoned by these people. And they run around and they use street theater tactics, just like they do when they do prostitution sting operations. It's no different. You know, when the police and the county sheriff do prostitution sting operations, what do? They take over an entire motel in order for them to control the area for their operations. Well, it's no different when they use a sting operation, when they target specific people at apartment complexes. It's no fucking different. No different. They surround their target. They take over the surrounding apartments surrounding their target to control the area. Once they have control of the area, they bring in their civilian operatives that they pay in cash to pedify their target. And then law enforcement documents those people making those accusations for the purpose of building a bullshit case. Now, they have a name for this shit. They brag to me on an audio death threat, an admissible audio death threat. They brag to me, they call it pedofying. They admitted on a death threat. They pedofied me. They wanted me to know. They use that term. They're trying to provoke me into leaving my home and confronting them. And I know first off, I'm disabled. I can't walk very well. I can't talk very well. They were poisoning me. I'm severely disabled. I bleed internally constantly. I'm partially paralyzed from it. And they keep doing this. It's a form of harassment where they literally take over all the surrounding apartments surrounding mine. And they do so under the pretense of a sting operation. It's all done under the pretense of a sting. And they put on this bullshit street theater performance, just like they do when they have prostitution sting operations. What happens in a prostitution sting? Why, the police and the county sheriff take over a motel. They bring their female officers and their girlfriends to act as prostitutes, and then they perform for video surveillance. And they engage people on the streets and on the sidewalks, and people that might be going to a motel. They engage those people in conversation for the purpose of entrapment. Well, in this particular situation, this is not entrapment. This is outright framing. I'm not even doing anything. I'm sitting here in my fucking chair. I'm not even anywhere near my door or anything. I'm sitting here watching Nova on YouTube, which happens to be a very popular YouTuber. And I can hear outside these son of a bitches, these adults in law enforcement, of which are renting the apartment directly below me. They have the apartment manager assisting them in this bullshit operation of theirs. And she happens to be not directly below me, but one apartment over below me. In other words, she's over this way and then down beneath. I'm on the second floor, she's down on the first floor, so she's basically right across from me. She is literally helping the Portland Police and the county sheriffs in these street theater performances where the Portland Police and county sheriffs bring their girlfriends' brats over here. And then I'm not holding fault on the children. Technically speaking, law enforcement is guilty of corrupting minors. When they recruit their girlfriends' children into doing shit like this to people, guess fucking what? They're guilty of corrupting minors. Now, I'm not holding fault to those children, even though they're out there being coached and directed by law enforcement to do this to me. They sure as hell wouldn't be doing this to me if they weren't being directed by law enforcement to do so. They're obviously paid to do this. I've already had them at a previous time catching them doing this. Right now it's 2014. Well, I caught them doing this to me in 2009. And I actually caught them on video then. And I actually happened to catch those brats admitting that they were being paid. They were actually asking the officers how much they were being paid to pedofy me. And the police department told them $10,000 fucking dollars. Right after that, they started slapping my window screens, and they started knocking at my doorbell and ringing my doorbell, and they just started and hung out in front of my apartment and continuously made accusations. So the Portland Police and the Multnomah County Sheriffs pay people to do this to people, and they have a name for it. They call it pedofying. Gee, they got really quiet out there. I think law enforcement must realize that I'm documenting what their brats are doing out there, so they told the brats to quiet down, because now I don't hear them anymore. Right at the very beginning of this, when I first turned this on, you could hear them out there, and they were saying the word pedo. They were yelling it as they run away. But then they would come right back and then do it again, over and over and over again. Now, they're being directed to do this by the adults that brought them over here. And they are in law enforcement. They don't live here. They're brought here by law enforcement. The apartment manager fully cooperates with any and all operation that law enforcement's involved in. So when my wife's fuck buddies in law enforcement want to frame me and pedify me and poison me, why, she assists in every operation that they're involved in, which is why I'm surrounded by people that don't give a fuck. Gee, they got very quiet out there after I started pointing out what they're doing. Gee, they must have me under illegal video surveillance inside my own home. How else would they know I'm documenting their constant pedofying that they do? I'm not afraid of your fucking asses. I'll put this on the goddamn internet. I'm not scared of your asses. You're a bunch of fucking murderers. Go direct your brats some more, pedo cops. Go direct your brats some more. That's what you all do. Cops have so many girlfriends with children that pedophile people for them that they just don't give a shit. It doesn't fucking dawn on them they're guilty of corrupting minors. Now, I know damn well if I go out there and confront them, I know I won't confront the children, but I most definitely would be willing to confront the adults directing them. I know damn fucking full well, they're in law enforcement, I know damn fucking full well, they would just shoot me, and then they would have some stupid statement on the news where a crazy person was shot, was killed, and then they'll say some stupid statement like an officer-involved shooting. And that's pretty much how they leave it at that on the news. So news does not report crimes that citizens report on cops. When a citizen has a complaint on cops, nobody takes the complaint. If I confront these murderers, these pedophiles, in their bullshit sting operations, if I actually confronted them, they would just pretend that I'm dangerous, shoot me on the spot, and then the news would pretty much cover it up by simply saying there was an officer-involved shooting. You know why they say that? Because the news media never admits cops are murderers and shooters. So they'll just say officer-involved shooting. They don't admit cops kill people. They never admit cops kill people. They don't admit to that. They just admit that officers are involved. That's it. No details, no explanation. So they deliberately and intentionally give the people that the cops kill the appearance of being bad guys in order to make the cops appear to be justified. And then, of course, nobody in the news media questions it, and they never discuss it any further. So essentially what they're trying to do is they're just trying to provoke me, nonstop harassment style, right where I fucking live, right where I live. And the moment I try to confront them, that's when they just open fire. And of course, news media just covers it up by labeling it as an officer-involved shooting, and then they'll probably make the accusation because Portland Police and Multnomah County Sheriffs and local news media always labels the victims they murder as mentally ill. That's like a standard procedure with the Portland Pedophile Police Department and the Multnomah County Pedophile Sheriffs, of which they never take complaints from citizens. They ignore fucking complaints. They're a fucking mob. They're organized criminals. They have so many buddies and girlfriends that fucking lie for their asses that they just don't give a damn. Well, guess what? I already proved their fucking guilt. I have their fucking asses bragging on missable death threats, and I literally caught law enforcement committing a fucking murder, and I caught them on an audio recorder. So I don't give a fuck. So it boils down to them or me. Pissed off? Yes, I am. Angry? Yes, I am. Disabled? Yes, I am. A criminal? No, I'm not. My wife was having a fucking affair with a fucking cop. And they targeted me and my family ever fucking since. They battered my mother. They poisoned my mother and father. When my father warned me about what they did to him, they murdered him. And from that point forward, I was being blackmailed by these fucking son of a bitches. Gee, they're very quiet out there now. Now that I'm documenting their pedofying activities, they became extremely quiet out there. Tito Terry's just pissed. They must have me under illegal video surveillance within my home for them to know that I'm documenting their pedofying activities. Because as soon as I turn on my cell phone and have it recording and start explaining what they're doing out there, as soon as I started explaining, they told those brats out there to quiet down. Now they're quiet. They were for about a half hour just non-stop running back and forth. They're acting like they're playing out there, and then when they get near my apartment, they run away screaming, "Pedo!" But they repeat the process over and over and over and over and over and over. They repeat it over and over. Well, this is what they were doing to me in 2009. I was much more debilitated from being poisoned by them back then. I was very debilitated in 2009. I could hardly talk, let alone walk. I couldn't form sentences back then because I was so badly poisoned. I mean, I couldn't even breathe normally back then. I mean, I had to manually breathe. I was so badly poisoned that I couldn't breathe automatically. I had to breathe manually. In other words, I had to think about it because I would simply stop breathing because I was so badly poisoned. My whole system was so fucked up from being poisoned by them. So I was much more severely debilitated and literally unable to confront them. I'm more physically able to now, but I know fucking full. I'm still disabled. I'm still severely disabled. I can move around, but not very well, not very fast. I'm partially disabled. It's taken years just for me to get to a point where I could literally verbally form sentences. Because the pain was so debilitating that it was just near impossible for me to communicate in any normal fashion, way, shape, or form. Now, I am severely disabled. I am not able really to do very much of anything. I bleed internally constantly, so I'm always weak from blood loss. I can't get help from a hospital because the Portland Police and the Multnomah County Sheriff's made damn sure that I could not get help from any hospital. In other words, no hospital will help me because of it. They used their power of influence to prevent me from getting help from a hospital. And I've tried going to multiple hospitals. My 911 calls get covered up. So I literally have no way to get help. Calling for help in Portland, Oregon doesn't get help when my wife is having an affair with a cop. There's nobody in this town that takes complaints. This whole fucking town is so openly fascist that it's ridiculous. The police department doesn't give a shit if they're caught directing their girlfriend's brats to pedify people. They don't even care if they're caught. It's like they don't care. There's nobody I can call. There's nobody I can report this to. That I can report this to. That gives a shit. Now they have a name for this. They call it pedofying. Just like any sting operation, the Portland police and the county sheriffs, when they do a sting operation, they take control of the surrounding area through sheer numbers. Like if the police have a prostitution sting, what do? They'll take over an entire motel, and they'll have 15 to 30 officers involved in that sting operation, and they'll have several female officers, and maybe even a few of their girlfriends that are not officers dress up like a bunch of prostitutes, and then they start performing for video surveillance. And you could essentially refer to it as using street theater tactics, because they're performing for video surveillance. And they literally take control of the area so that, whatever they say goes. In other words, it's their word versus nobody else's word, because they control the area through sheer numbers. So if they all agree to charge somebody for something, well, they have the majority rule type of a thing. So this is why they take control of an area. Well, it's no different when they target a specific person. They take control of the entire area. Now, they're not framing me for being a John or some stupid ass thing like that. They're trying to frame me for my wife and her lover's crimes. My wife and her lover, who was a police officer, Portland police officer, name is Eric Carlson, was framing me as a pedophile. And Officer Eric Carlson was acting as a double to do so. And he even dyed his hair my color so that he could act as a double. He was a brunette. He's a natural brunette. But he fucking dyed his hair blonde so that he could act as a goddamn double, so that he could impersonate me. And my wife had our daughters turned against me. So they essentially had my wife and daughters to lie for them. So it was a matter of for them anyway, it was just a matter of them making me look like a bad guy. And they were doing this by using Officer Eric Carlson as a double. Well, they committed a shit ton of crimes. There are a shit ton of victims of these people. They were killing people during this shit of theirs. I'm not the only person they poisoned. Well, they're trying to pin their shit on me. And the problem is, sounds like they're starting up again out there. The problem is, I discovered right away that this Officer Eric Carlson was a look-alike to me and was acting as a double. I was aware he dyed his hair to impersonate me, and when I found out that he was having an affair with my wife and that my wife was hooking our daughters up with him, I tried to warn people about it. And my wife poisoned the hell out of me. And after they poisoned me, I was so severely debilitated, I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk. I mean, and I was surrounded by people that didn't give a damn. I was surrounded by people that acted like nothing's wrong, because my wife and her daughters were sleeping around with cops at the time, and the cops told him, just act like nothing's wrong. Just pretend he's a drug addict and just fill his home with drug paraphernalia, and then they'll just label him a druggie. That's how they cover up poison. That's how the Portland police and the Multnomah County sheriffs cover up their murders they commit, and that's how they cover up poisonings. They label their victim mentally ill. They already have their victim debilitated, so their victim can't defend themselves, and then they just label their victim mentally ill and as a drug addict. And then, of course, the police department and the county sheriffs have so many of their bros that work at hospitals that it's nothing for the Portland police. Nothing for them to get their bros out of hospital to back up their bullshit. Now, most people would refer to this as organized crime. But police and county sheriffs refer to their operations as sting operations. They were using a goddamn double the entire time. So they were setting me up for a lot of shit. Now, there's a lot of shit I'm sure they were setting me up for that I don't even know anything about yet. But I did, in fact, catch these people using Officer Eric Carlson as a fucking double, and they were setting me up for a fucking murder. I caught them in the act. They broke into my home. I was in my home at the time. I was asleep, and their break-in woke me up. Now, I thought I was catching my wife and her daughters sleeping around with their fuck buddies in law enforcement, so I put in a audio recorder in my wife's purse, thinking I'm catching them in their conspiracy together. And oh sure, I caught them all right. I caught them big time. What I didn't realize at the time was they were committing a murder. And my audio recorder caught them in the act of committing the murder. So they're desperate to silence me. They're desperate to destroy my name and reputation. They want me to get the blame for the Portland Pedophile Police Department and Multnomah County Pedo Sheriff Department's crimes. Because you know what? They already verbally and publicly gave me the blame. They did this while I was debilitated, bedridden, and bleeding internally and unable to find help. So they don't give a shit if I know they're guilty. They don't give a shit if I catch them in the act, because the Portland Police Department and the Multnomah County Sheriffs are a bunch of organized killers. They're no different than the KKK. They're no different than the KKK. They operate in the same, they have the same fascist mentality as the KKK do. They're not racist like the KKK are, but they use the same tactics that the KKK use. They slander the hell out of people. They stage crimes using doubles and lookalikes, and they give blame to their targets by literally having sheer numbers back up their bullshit. You know, it's nothing for the Portland police and the county sheriffs, who are already organized, who already have shit tons of civilians that lie for them. It is nothing for them to point a finger at somebody and give blame for something. It is nothing for them to do this. And the news media always takes the Portland Pedophile Police Department and Multnomah County Pedo Sheriff's Department side, and never gives a damn if law enforcement is the ones committing the crimes. And as a matter of fact, there's nobody that'll take a complaint. You charge these fuckers with a fucking crime, and they'll look you in the fucking face and smirk at you. They don't care. They'll ignore anything you say about these people, and they'll smirk at you. And then they put on this bullshit act of treating you like you're mentally ill. And they do this while smirking. And it's their way of making it known to the people that they're framing that there's nobody that gives a shit. They intentionally make it known to their victims, because there's nobody I can call that gives a shit. Portland Pedophile Police Department and the Multnomah County Pedo Sheriffs have a history of recruiting their girlfriends' children into sting operations. And what do? They pedify their targets. How do they do it? Why, the Portland Police and County Sheriff just take over the surrounding apartments surrounding their target, and they always get help from the apartment managers. Apartment managers always cooperate with any and all police operations, and they bring their girlfriend's brats over, and then they direct them to run near the apartment and call the dude a pedo and run away. And then they repeat that process over and over and over again. And they just don't give a shit. And they don't give a fuck if they're caught on video doing it. They don't give a shit if anybody knows it. It's not, they don't care. I can sit here right now with this stupid cell phone and call 911, and I guarantee you I wouldn't get help. I'd get several officers at the door, none of which would take my complaint, none of which would act on my complaint. They don't give a shit. They're still out there. I can hear them, but they're not yelling or screaming or anything right now. So they're just talking. They're not right outside the doorway. They're out. They're down below. They're at the ground level. I can barely hear them out there talking amongst themselves. So they're still out there. They're still active, but they're being quiet. Now, I would probably, I could step outside right now and probably get them on video. But what purpose would that serve? All that would do would make me look worse on their video surveillance, because they're paying brats out there to call me a pedo. Now, what would it look like if they get me on video surveillance trying to get them on video? What would that make me look like? So see, I have to document their harassment from the safety of my home. And they most definitely make a person feel like they're not welcome to set foot outside their home. This is literally organized crime. It's organized murder. The Multnomah County Pedo Sheriffs and the Portland Pedo Police Department has a history of killing people this way. I knew in the 70s, this is 2014 right now, I knew in the 70s, early 70s, that the Multnomah County Sheriffs did this shit to people. I witnessed the Multnomah County Sheriffs doing this shit to people back then. So this kind of activity is actually relatively common knowledge, and it's just officially disavowed by law enforcement and by the government in general and by news media. But there are lots and lots of people that know that the police department does this. And it's all done under the pretense of a sting operation. Yeah, you can still hear the brats out there talking to some adults out there. It's not easy. I don't know if the cell phone's picking up on it or not, but I'm able to hear it, barely. They're not yelling or screaming now. It sounds like they're being directed and coached by adults, because I'm mostly hearing adults out there talking to the brats. So it sounds like the adult officers are directing the brats to do something different, since I'm sitting here documenting their pedofying activities. And I have no qualms about pointing out the fact that the apartment manager has been assisting them the entire fucking time. You know damn well, Terry, this pissed me off. Piece of fucking shit cops. Goddamn fascist fucking government. Go direct your brats to perform some more, pedo cops. Go direct your brats to perform some more. Corrupt some more brats, pedo cops. That's what you're guilty of. Felony crime right there. Police and sheriffs in Portland, Oregon have done this to people for decades. I'm literally a witness to the county sheriffs in the early 70s doing this kind of shit to people. I never knew what they called it back then. I found out after they targeted me what they call it because they bragged on an admissible death threat they put in my home. They bragged admitting they pedophied me. They bragged on a fucking audio death threat, which is admissible since it's a death threat. They bragged on a fucking death threat. They wanted me to know they pedophied me. They wanted me to know how they did it too. They admitted they used flyers and that they restacked the entire town. They admitted to that on an audio death threat. The Portland Pedophile Police Department and the Multnomah County Pedo Sheriffs admitted on an audio death threat. They pedophied me using flyers and that they restacked the entire town, which means they've done it multiple times. I have never had a trial or a conviction for fucking anything. Well, the Portland Police Department and Multnomah County Sheriffs use these tactics over and over and over and over again. And they call it pedofying. And they kill people this way. They brag to me on a death threat, they do. I already knew before they bragged on a death threat how they do it, since I witnessed them doing this shit in the 70s. So this is a common form of murder. Back in the 1920s, the KKK used to lynch people all the time. And they did so publicly, and they got away with it every fucking time. And never did the KKK stand trial for all those lynchings they did back in the 1920s. Well, 2014, Portland Pedophile Police Department and the Multnomah County Pedo Sheriff pretty much murders people by, not by lynching, they murder people by pedofying. And they pay their girlfriends that have brats a shit ton of money to pedify their target. So nobody will care if their target is murdered. And that's how they make their target appear to be a bad guy. So that nobody will care. And then after they murder me, they'll just give me the blame for all kinds of shit that they're guilty of. And nobody will give a shit, and everybody will just mindlessly, stupidly take their word for everything. Because nobody wants to question government. Nobody wants to admit their government lies and is organized, and that they murder people, and that they treat it like a fucking sport. Nobody wants to think of their government that way. Everybody wants to believe that when news media tells them about current events, everybody wants to believe that news media is being honest. Nobody wants to think of news media as being a bunch of propagandists that lie for fascist cops. Because to wake up to the fact that that's what's occurring is to wake up to the fact that you live in a fucking murderous fascist country. I feel threatened right now, and I'm in my own fucking home. I don't feel safe in my own home because of these fucking pedophile sting operatives. And yes, they're pedos. They recruit their girlfriends' brats to perform for their illegal video surveillance. That's enough to charge them as pedophiles all by itself. Well, they also have a tendency to use doubles as well. an officer will dress up like me and then stage a crime near one of their girlfriend's brats so that they can make me look like a bad guy when I'm just sitting here in my home doing absolutely fucking nothing wrong. Law enforcement can be using a double down below, hanging out with those brats, and they take side shots and back shots of that damn double so that they can give me the blame for shit after they murdered me. I have them admitting to this shit on audio death threats that they put in my home. They broke into my home. They put death threats in my home. They're not hiding their guilt. They're flaunting it. They don't give a shit if I know. And there's nobody in this fucking state of Oregon that takes fucking complaints. I'm sitting here in a shit ton of pain, partially paralyzed, bleeding internally, debilitated from being poisoned, and they're running around constantly staging their street theater tactics, just like they use in any other sting operation. And they're not trying to hide that from anybody. And they don't give a fuck if anybody here knows. It's all about them just building a bullshit case using their own video surveillance and using their own operatives to perform street theater tactics. So I don't have to do anything at all for them to make me look like a bad guy. I can sit here and do absolutely nothing wrong. And while I sit here and do nothing wrong, they're out there directing brats to perform around a police officer that's probably dressed like me and is acting as a look-alike. And then they'll have an officer down below dressed like me or something, and then they'll tell the children, yeah, go near him, and then run away and scream pedo, and then they do that shit over and over again. And they do this for video surveillance. This is how they frame people as pedophiles. And they always recruit their girlfriend's brats into this shit. And those people are usually paid in cash by law enforcement to do this. And according to your government, it's perfectly legal for law enforcement to recruit civilians into sting operations. So they don't really try to hide the fact they do this. Look it up. Google it. They recruit civilians into sting operations all the time. Well, guess what? They frame people in sting operations. And I became targeted by these son of a bitches because my wife was having a fucking affair with a fucking pedophile cop.